His friends were already recording before he called his own bride a charity case. That means this humiliation was planned, doesn't it? So why does the best man suddenly look panicked now?
I only married Elvira out of pity. The champagne glass was still raised in my husband's hand when the room exploded with laughter. We were standing in the middle of our wedding reception. Cameras were recording. My family was sitting 3 tables away. And Nathan, the man I had just married 30 minutes earlier, was smiling while his friends toasted me like I was some kind of joke.
"One man's trash is another man's charity project,"
one of them shouted. More laughter, louder this time. I couldn't even move. I just stared at Nathan, waiting for him to say he was kidding. But he looked proud of himself. Like humiliating me in front of 200 guests was the best part of the night. Then his best friend Marcus suddenly stood up so hard his chair slammed against the floor. And when he grabbed the microphone from Nathan's hand, the entire room went silent. Marcus didn't look nervous when he took the mic. That was the first thing I noticed. He looked angry. Not loud angry, not drunk angry. The kind that had been building quietly for a long time. Nathan gave a short laugh beside me, reaching for the microphone again like this was all part of the entertainment.
"Relax," he said, grinning at the crowd. "Marcus takes everything too seriously."
A few people chuckled, but nowhere near as loudly as before. The energy in the ballroom had shifted. It was subtle, but I could feel it. A minute earlier, everyone had been leaning back in their chairs, drinking champagne and shouting jokes across the tables. Now, people were watching carefully. Marcus kept hold of the microphone.
"You think humiliating your wife in front of her family is funny?"
he asked. Nathan shrugged like the question itself was ridiculous.
"Oh, come on," he said. "Elvira knows I'm joking."
I looked at him automatically when he said my name, waiting again for some sign that this would turn around, that he would finally smile at me the way husbands were supposed to smile at their wives on their wedding day. Instead, he took another sip of champagne. That hurt more than the joke. Around us, the reception hall still looked beautiful. White roses hanging from crystal stands, gold candlelight flickering across the tables. The giant screen behind the dance floor still showed edited photos from our engagement shoot. In every picture, Nathan had his arm around me possessively, smiling directly into the camera while I looked at him instead. I remembered how proud he'd been of those photos.
"People need to see how lucky you got,"
he joked when we picked them up. At the time, I thought he meant it affectionately. Now I wasn't so sure. I became aware of tiny things I hadn't noticed earlier. Nathan's friends whispering to each other before the speech. One of them already recording before Nathan even stood up. The way his college friend Derek nearly choked laughing, like he'd heard the line before. And suddenly, I remembered something else. Earlier that afternoon, while the bridal party was taking pictures outside the venue, Marcus had walked up to me alone near the garden entrance. He looked distracted, pale almost. "Are you okay?" I'd asked him. Instead of answering, he looked back toward the building where Nathan and the groomsmen were drinking. Then he asked me a strange question. "Are you absolutely sure you want to marry him?" At the time, I thought it was pre-wedding nerves, maybe guilt. Marcus and Nathan had been friends since they were kids. I figured he was emotional about losing his best friend to marriage. But standing there now, with 200 guests watching in silence, I realized something that made my stomach tighten. Marcus hadn't looked emotional earlier. He'd looked worried. And when I turned toward him again, still holding the microphone in his hand, he looked directly at me and said quietly, "Elvira, there's something you don't know." For a second, nobody moved. Even the waitstaff near the back of the ballroom had stopped walking. One server stood frozen beside a table holding a tray of untouched champagne glasses, staring toward Marcus like she was waiting to see whether this was still part of the reception or something else entirely. Nathan let out a slow breath through his nose and forced a smile. "Marcus," he said calmly, "sit down before you make this awkward." Awkward. The word landed strangely after what had just happened. Marcus didn't sit. He loosened his tie slightly, still holding the microphone at his side now instead of speaking into it, like he was trying very hard to stay controlled. "You already made it awkward," he said. Nathan laughed again, but this time it sounded thinner. A few guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats. My mother looked down at her folded hands. My older brother avoided looking at me entirely. Nobody seemed to know where to look anymore.
I realized I was still standing beside Nathan, like we were posing for photographs. He leaned closer to me without fully turning his head. "Don't start crying," he muttered under his breath. "You'll make this worse." But Marcus saw my face change, and suddenly I remembered all the little moments I'd spent years explaining away. Nathan correcting how I spoke in front of his coworkers, laughing when I admitted I'd never been to certain restaurants before, telling me which dresses looked cheap, always reminding me how different our worlds were. At first, I thought he was helping me fit in. Then eventually, I stopped arguing altogether. Marcus looked between us carefully. "You really want to keep going?" he asked Nathan. Nathan spread his arms toward the crowd like he was still in control of the room. "She knew what this was," he said casually. I frowned immediately. What did that even mean? Before I could ask, Nathan's mother stood halfway from her chair and said sharply, "Marcus, enough." But Marcus ignored her completely. Instead, he reached into his suit pocket and wrapped his hand around his phone. Then he looked directly at me again. And this time, his voice sounded almost apologetic. "Elvira, did Nathan ever tell you about the bet?" The room went completely still after Marcus said the word, bet. Not confused stillness, the other kind. The kind where people suddenly become careful with their faces. Nathan stood up so quickly his chair pushed backward across the dance floor. "Give me the microphone," he said. Marcus didn't move. Nathan laughed again, but now there was something sharp underneath it. "You're drunk," he said. "Sit down." Marcus stared at him for a long moment before answering. "No," he said quietly. "I'm just tired of watching you do this to her." A murmur spread across the tables. I looked from one face to another, trying to understand what was happening. Some guests looked confused. Others looked uncomfortable in a way that told me they already knew pieces of this conversation. Nathan noticed it too. "That's not what it sounds like," he said quickly, finally looking directly at me. "It was a joke between friends." Marcus gave a humorless smile. "A 2-year joke?" Nathan's jaw tightened. My chest suddenly felt cold. Marcus raised the microphone again. 2 years ago," he said, "Nathan made a bet with his friends that he could turn a woman from a poor background into the perfect, grateful wife." Nobody laughed this time. I heard someone at a nearby table whisper, "Oh my God." Nathan rubbed a hand across his forehead like Marcus was embarrassing him, not exposing him. "It wasn't serious," he snapped. "We were drunk."
Just a second. His friends already knew about the bet and nobody stopped him. So how long has Elvira been getting humiliated behind her back?
But the details started rearranging themselves in my mind before he could keep talking. Nathan insisting I stop working night shifts because they were beneath me, buying me expensive clothes, then criticizing me if I didn't wear them, telling me my old friends were jealous of our relationship, always framing everything like he was rescuing me from a lesser life.
I had mistaken control for generosity. Marcus looked around the ballroom slowly. You know what the worst part was? He asked. Some of you helped him. Several of Nathan's friends immediately looked down at their tables. One of them quietly set his drink aside. Nathan stepped toward Marcus now, lowering his voice. Stop. It wasn't anger anymore. It sounded like fear. Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. No, he said. Tell them the real reason you married her. And for the first time all night, Nathan looked genuinely panicked. Nathan's face changed so fast it barely looked real. The smugness disappeared first, then the confidence. What was left underneath looked cornered. Marcus, he said quietly, don't do this here. That was the first honest thing he'd said all night. Marcus glanced down at the phone in his hand. You should have thought about that before tonight. Nathan moved toward him again, but two of the groomsmen stepped between them instinctively. Not aggressively. More like they suddenly realized something had gone too far and didn't know how to stop it anymore. The ballroom felt smaller now. Nobody was eating. Nobody was drinking. Even the music technician near the DJ booth had stopped pretending to adjust equipment and was openly listening. Marcus connected his phone to the reception speakers. A second later, muffled background noise filled the room. Men laughing, glasses clinking, music playing somewhere in the distance. Then Nathan's voice came through the speakers, clearly. She's perfect for this. I stopped breathing. The recording sounded like it had been taken at a bar or private party. Nathan was laughing casually, completely relaxed.
She's insecure enough to stay grateful, his recorded voice continued. Women like Elvira don't leave. They just keep trying harder. A few guests visibly recoiled. Another voice laughed and asked, You actually gonna marry her? Nathan answered immediately. If it works out financially? Absolutely. The room erupted into whispers. I felt heat rushing into my face as memories started connecting themselves without permission. Nathan discouraging me from going back to school, telling me therapy was a waste of money, asking for access to my accounts because couples shouldn't have secrets. Every insult wrapped carefully inside concern, every humiliation disguised as humor. Across the room, Nathan's father slowly sat down in his chair like his legs had weakened beneath him. One of Nathan's friends muttered under his breath, You said you deleted that recording. Nathan ignored him completely. He was staring only at Marcus now. You have no idea what you're doing, he said. Marcus looked almost disgusted. No, he replied. You're the one who underestimated her. Then he turned toward me, and suddenly his expression softened for the first time all night. Elvira, he said carefully, Nathan didn't marry you out of pity. The room fell silent again. Marcus swallowed once before continuing. He married you because he was terrified you'd find out who you really are. For a moment, I genuinely thought Marcus had to be talking about someone else. The entire ballroom stayed silent, waiting. Nathan looked like he wanted to disappear. Marcus lowered the microphone slightly and took a breath before speaking again. 2 years ago, he said, Nathan found out Elvira was connected to Victor Brown. The name moved through the room immediately. People recognized it. Victor Brown owned half the commercial properties downtown. Hospitals, apartment developments, office buildings. The kind of wealth people read about instead of meeting in real life. I stared at Marcus, completely lost. What are you talking about? I asked quietly. Marcus looked at me with something close to guilt. Victor Brown has been searching for his biological daughter for years, he said. Nathan discovered there was a strong possibility that daughter was you. The words barely made sense at first. I felt disconnected from my own body, like I was listening to somebody else's life being explained. Marcus continued carefully, piece by piece. I had been adopted as an infant after a custody dispute involving my biological mother. Most records had disappeared over the years. Recently, Victor Brown reopened the investigation after serious health complications pushed him to search again. Nathan learned about it through connections at his firm, and instead of telling me, he pursued me. The ballroom remained completely silent, except for the faint hum of the speakers overhead. "He knew," Marcus said. "Before you ever met him seriously, he knew." I slowly turned toward Nathan. He finally spoke, but now his voice sounded small. "Elvira, listen to me." "No," Marcus cut in sharply. "Tell her the rest." Nathan closed his eyes briefly. Marcus did it for him. He said if Elvira ever realized her real value, she'd leave him. So he made sure she never did. Everything suddenly made sense. The constant criticism, the humiliation disguised as teasing, the way he slowly trained me to feel grateful for basic kindness. He hadn't married beneath him. He had spent years making sure I believed I was beneath him. I looked down at my wedding ring. My hands were shaking now, but my mind felt strangely calm. Nathan stepped toward me carefully. "I loved you," he said. I finally looked directly into his eyes. "You loved controlling me," I answered. Then I removed the ring and placed it on the head table between us. Nobody spoke. Nathan's father stood up first. The disappointment on his face looked almost physical. "You humiliated your wife for entertainment," he said quietly, "and built your marriage on manipulation." Nathan tried to respond, but his father walked away before he could finish. After that, people started leaving quickly. Some guests came over to me quietly. Others avoided eye contact entirely. A few of Nathan's friends slipped out without saying goodbye. Meanwhile, the wedding videographer approached Marcus near the back of the ballroom. I overheard him ask one question. "You still want me to keep the footage?" Marcus looked toward me first, and for the first time that night, somebody waited for my answer. "Yes," I said. The video spread online within days. Nathan's company placed him on leave almost immediately after clips from the reception started circulating. Several of his friends faced backlash too, after people connected them to the recordings and messages Marcus later provided. Nathan called me constantly at first. Then his mother started calling too. I answered neither. 3 weeks later, the DNA results confirmed everything. Victor Brown really was my biological father. We met privately for coffee in a quiet restaurant far outside the city. No lawyers, no reporters. Just two strangers trying to process years that could never be returned. But strangely, that wasn't the moment my life changed most. That moment had already happened. Late one night, I reopened the wedding video alone in my apartment. I watched the laughter, Nathan's speech, my own face trying not to break apart in front of 200 people. Then I watched Marcus stand up. I paused the screen there, because that was the exact moment everything shifted. The moment they stopped laughing, and the moment I finally saw myself clearly.
The disturbing part isn't that everyone laughed first. It's how many people already understood the game being played. So how many relationships survive because one person never realizes their actual value?